September 1942. The eastern bank of the Volga River. Night has fallen, but the sky burns in a suffocating shade of crimson. Across the dark expanse of water lies Stalingrad, not a city of living men, but an endless, jagged wall of flame. 19-year-old recruits huddle inside flat-bottomed wooden barges. Their hands grip cold Mosin Nagant rifles with trembling, white-knuckled fingers. General Vasily Chuikov looks across the crossing. He carries order number 227 in his chest pocket. Not one step back. German artillery shells tear through the dark sky, crashing into the river and throwing geysers of black water into the night air. Burning oil from ruptured storage tanks spills across the water's surface, turning the wide Volga into a literal river of floating fire. A wooden barge is struck mid-river. Young soldiers plunge into the freezing current, weighed down by heavy overcoats and ammunition crates. Statisticians at front headquarters calculate the mathematics of survival. The average life expectancy here is less than 24 brutal hours. Those who survive the crossing crawl onto the muddy western bank, clawing at wet gravel beneath continuous showers of mortar shrapnel. Above them looms the smoke-blackened skeleton of the central railway station, changing hands 3 times before the clock strikes midnight. A veteran sergeant wraps a torn cloth around his bleeding palm and points toward the shattered factory chimneys in the distance. In the streets beyond, German panzers grind over pulverized brick, their steel treads clattering against the shattered bones of apartment blocks. Every soldier understands the terrible geography. There is no land for them beyond the Volga. Retreat is simply death by execution. A single red star on a muddy soldier's cap gleams under the flickering light of burning warehouses along the shoreline. The 13th Guards Rifle Division steps into the smoking labyrinth. 10,000 young men who will be decimated by morning light. At the center of the city stands Hill 102, Mamayev Kurgan, an ancient burial mound turned into an altar of modern slaughter. Whoever holds this barren crest commands the entire Volga crossing and every square mile of the burning city below. For weeks, the summit changes hands 14 times in 7 days. Men do not fight for kilometers here, they fight for footsteps. Artillery from both armies pounds the hilltop until every blade of grass, every tree, and every trace of soil is atomized. Soldiers crawl through cratered moonscapes of scorched earth, dragging Maxim machine guns through suffocating layers of fine gray ash. A German infantry assault charges up the slope beneath a canopy of howling Nebelwerfer rockets tearing through the overcast sky. In the dense smoke, long-range marksmanship becomes impossible. Combat collapses into close-quarters brutality with sharpened spade blades and heavy trench clubs. A young Red Army rifleman huddles inside a bomb crater, his bayonet locked, waiting for the shadows through the swirling dust. The air itself smells of pulverized limestone, cordite fumes, and the sickeningly sweet scent of 1,000 unburied bodies under the sun. By October, the slopes of Mamayev Kurgan are covered in such dense iron shrapnel that compass needles spin uncontrollably upon the crest. Chuikov listens to the radio reports inside his bunker carved into the river cliff, the ceiling shaking with every heavy detonation. Regiments are reduced to companies. Companies dissolve into handfuls of stubborn men refusing to yield the water tower ruins. At night, the wounded lie in craters beneath starless skies, listening to propaganda loudspeakers echoing across the desolate, smoking trenches. The hill remains an open wound in the center of the front, claiming tens of thousands of lives for 50 vertical meters. When spring comes months later, no grass will grow on Mamayev Kurgan. The earth is poisoned with lead, iron, and bone. By mid-October, the battle narrows into the massive industrial district, the Barrikady, the tractor works, and the Red October steel factory. German soldiers coin a bitter new word for this warfare, Rattenkrieg, the War of the Rats, a nightmare fought beneath ceilings of twisted steel. Inside the Red October foundry, massive steel girders hang like broken ribs above vats of frozen, unpoured iron. The front line is no longer drawn on maps. It runs along a single brick wall, a workshop corridor, or an iron staircase. Soviet workers continue assembling T-34 tanks inside shattered assembly halls, while mortar shells smash through the skylights above their heads. Tanks roll off the assembly line unpainted, straight out the factory gates, engaging German panzers 50 paces outside the doorway. Grenades are lobbed through ventilation shafts and broken heating ducts. Men fight in absolute darkness beneath concrete foundations. A German pioneer squad plants explosive satchels to breach a workshop wall, only to find Soviet submachine gunners waiting behind the rubble. PPS-41 drum magazines rattle incessantly, their high-velocity fire echoing like jackhammers through the cavernous industrial graveyard. Dust settles over everything, a thick, gray powder turning human faces into identical, hollow-eyed phantoms with bleeding lips. In the boiler room, water pipes become subterranean highways where combatants stalk one another with knives and entrenching tools. Neither side takes prisoners in the foundry. The fighting is intimate, merciless, and stripped of all military romance. Chuikov's doctrine is ruthless. Hug the enemy. Stay so close to the German lines that the Luftwaffe cannot drop bombs without killing their own. Night brings no respite. Flares arc over the skeletal smokestacks, casting monstrous dancing shadows across the mountains of shattered iron slag. The factory ruins hold firm. For every workshop the 6th Army captures, they lose a battalion in the concrete dust. In late September, a 4-story brick apartment building on the January 9th square becomes an impenetrable island of defiance. Sergeant Yakov Pavlov, a quiet 24-year-old squad leader, takes command of the position with only a handful of exhausted men. The building oversees a massive open square, providing a clear kilometer of firing line across the German-held avenues. Pavlov and his men fortify every window and doorway with sandbags, iron girders, and dense coils of barbed wire. 25 soldiers garrison this concrete fortress. Russians, Ukrainians, Georgians, Kazakhs, and Uzbeks, bound together by an unbreakable oath. In the flooded basement, civilian survivors and wounded soldiers huddle together under the soft, flickering light of kerosene lamps. On the roof, a PTR's anti-tank rifle team lies in wait, punching holes through the thin roof armor of approaching German panzers. German assault waves crash against the building daily. Every attack is shattered by interlocking machine gun crossfire from the ground floor. The Germans mark the building as a major fortress on their tactical maps, entirely unaware it is held by 24 stubborn riflemen. A subterranean trench is dug by hand toward the riverbank, allowing ammunition crates to be dragged inside under darkness. Between bombardments, a soldier plays a battered phonograph in the basement hallway, the soft music drowned out by mortar blasts. For 58 consecutive days and nights, Pavlov's house withstands continuous artillery barrages, dive bombers, and infantry charges. General Chuikov later noted with grim irony, "This small house cost the German army more casualties than the capture of Paris." On the bullet-pocked facade, a single piece of chalk scrawls the names of the defenders beneath the shattered brickwork. The house never falls. It remains standing as an indestructible monument of human willpower amidst a sea of smoking ruins. As November arrives, the temperature plummets. A terrifying new predator emerges from the shattered concrete canyons: the sniper. Vasily Zaytsev, a young hunter from the Ural Mountains, lies motionless beneath a sheet of corrugated iron since 3 hours before dawn. He has learned the rhythm of the ruins, how dust drifts on the wind, how shadows lengthen across broken brick walls. Through the 3.5x optical scope of his Mosin Nagant rifle, the battlefield is reduced to a single breath and a 400-meter crosshair. German officers learn to fear the light of day. Stepping into an open trench or lighting a cigarette brings sudden, silent death. The sniper war is a deadly chess match, played with mirrors, dummy helmets on sticks, and infinite, freezing patience. Zaytsev trains dozens of young recruits, the Zaychata, teaching them to blend into the rubble like stone dust. A German master sniper is sent from Berlin to hunt down Zaytsev, initiating a 3-day duel inside the railway yard ruins. For 72 hours, neither man moves. Both wait for a single twitch of cloth, a glint of morning sunlight on glass. A piece of broken glass is raised to catch the dawn light. The German sniper fires, revealing his concealed position beneath a metal plate. A single Soviet bullet answers. The duel in the railway yard is over in a fraction of a second. Between October and November, Soviet snipers eliminate over 200 officers and specialists along the factory perimeter. Fear paralyzes the German front lines. Soldiers whisper of invisible phantoms haunting the water mains and collapsed cellars. Zaytsev breathes gently into his gloved hands, clearing the frost from his scope lens as twilight settles over the Volga. In this war of attrition, one man with 5 cartridges can hold an entire infantry company pinned in frozen terror. November 19, 1942. Deep in the windswept steppes northwest and south of Stalingrad, a profound silence envelops the frozen earth. At 0730 hours, 3,500 Soviet artillery pieces erupt simultaneously, turning the morning sky into a roaring furnace. Operation Uranus has begun. Marshal Georgy Zhukov unleashes 1,000,000 men and 1,400 tanks in a massive double envelopment. T-34 tanks, painted in stark winter white, burst through the blinding blizzards, smashing the overextended Romanian flanks on the steppe. The Romanian 3rd and 4th Armies, lacking heavy anti-tank weaponry, collapse within hours beneath the relentless armored onslaught. Inside Stalingrad, the German 6th Army continues its desperate assault against the factories, completely oblivious that their rear is crumbling. 4 days of lightning advances across frozen rivers and blizzard-swept hills bring the 2 Soviet tank spearheads closer together. November 23rd, afternoon. Near the small town of Kalak-on-Don, the 4th Tank Corps meets the 4th Mechanized Corps. Soviet tank crews leap from their hatches in the freezing snow, embracing one another and firing green recognition flares into the sky. The steel trap has snapped shut. An entire German army, 290,000 men, is encircled in an iron ring. General Friedrich Paulus receives the catastrophic news inside his headquarters. The 6th Army is cut off from the fatherland. Hitler orders Paulus to stand firm. The 6th Army will hold its positions to the last cartridge. An air bridge will supply you. Reichsmarschall Göring promises 300 tons of supplies per day by air. In reality, the Luftwaffe barely delivers 80. Across the steppe, Soviet anti-aircraft batteries and winter fighters turn the air transport corridors into smoking graveyards of Junkers 52 planes. The hunters have become the hunted. Inside the ruins of Stalingrad, the encircled invaders look up at a sky that offers no salvation. December turns the pocket into Der Kessel, the Cauldron, a 30-mile expanse of barren snow where 30 below zero becomes the norm. German soldiers wrap themselves in torn blankets, burlap sacks, and scavenged overcoats, shivering uncontrollably inside shallow snow trenches. Rations collapse to catastrophic levels: 50 grams of sawdust-laced bread and a cup of watery horsemeat broth per day. Thousands of military horses are slaughtered and eaten until nothing remains but frozen bones buried beneath the deep snowdrifts. Field hospitals inside underground bunkers overflow with tens of thousands of frostbitten, gangrenous men with no bandages and no morphine. Lice crawl over dying bodies in the freezing dark. Typhus and dysentery spread like wildfire through the unheated cellars. In late December, Field Marshal Manstein launches Operation Winter Storm to relieve the pocket, but his tanks stall 40 miles away. The men inside the Kessel watch the distant artillery flashes fade on the horizon, realizing no one is coming to save them. Letters written by German soldiers in their final days speak not of victory or empire, but of bread, mothers, and unimaginable cold. On January 10, 1943, Operation Ring commences. 7 Soviet armies begin crushing the shrinking pocket with overwhelming artillery barrages. Potomnik airfield falls, followed by Gumrak. The last transport plane lifts off into the winter blizzard, leaving thousands screaming on the runway. Paulus moves his headquarters into the dark, filthy basement of the Univermag department store in the center of the ruins. Amputation saws work continuously by candlelight without anesthesia. The smell of rotting flesh permeates the frozen underground passages. Hitler promotes Paulus to General Feldmarschall by radio, a subtle invitation to commit suicide, as no German marshal has ever surrendered. Paulus refuses the morbid gesture. "I have no intention of shooting myself for this Bohemian corporal." The end has arrived. January 31st, 1943. Young Soviet riflemen surround the Univermag department store and descend cautiously into the dark basement cellar. General Feldmarschall Friedrich Paulus sits on a simple cot in the corner, unwashed, hollow-cheeked, and signs the instrument of capitulation. 2 days later, on February 2nd, the final pocket of German resistance inside the tractor factory falls silent. The battle is over. 91,000 emaciated German prisoners, including 22 generals, march through the frozen ruins into long columns of captivity. Wrapped in rags, dragging frost-bitten feet through the knee-deep snow, only 5,000 of these men will ever see Germany again. An eerie, profound silence descends upon the banks of the Volga, a quiet so deep that men weep upon hearing only the winter wind. 140 days of continuous bombardment have reduced a bustling modern metropolis into 40 miles of pulverized cinder. Over 2 million human beings were killed, wounded, or captured during the 5 months of the Stalingrad campaign. A young Red Army soldier places his fur cap on his rifle barrel and stands atop the factory roof, looking at the sunrise. On the shattered walls of the ruined workshops, surviving soldiers carve their names with bayonets. "We defended this city. We survived." Stalingrad broke the spine of the Wehrmacht. From this frozen riverbank, the tide of the Second World War turned irrevocably toward Berlin. A single red flag flutters softly in the bitter morning breeze above the ruined dome of the central department store. In the years to come, a colossal monument will rise upon Mamayev Kurgan. The motherland calls, watching over the silent Volga. Beneath her concrete foundation lie the bones of hundreds of thousands of boys whose names are known only to history. Here, on the edge of the frozen river, the world learned that there are things more unyielding than steel, the indomitable spirit of human endurance. Thank you for watching this story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more historical epics.